It's your eye health experts, Prevent Blindness Texas, and welcome to Eyespiring, a conversation about all things vision and life. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Eyespiring. I'm Heather Patrick, the CEO of Prevent Blindness Texas, and your host. And today we have a very special guest, Jennifer Surgalski, who I know through one of the deep loves of my life, Delta Gamma. But we're going to get to know her really well today in all facets of her life. Jennifer is the Senior Director of Strategic Project Development for the Dallas Cowboys Football Club. She's also Chief of Strategy for the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, and she too is a trustee of the Delta Gamma Foundation. Jennifer has a really cool career. She's been in sports for over 20 years, and she has contributed to the successful business endeavors of NFL franchises, including the Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, and currently the Cowboys. Over the last 15 years, Jennifer has been at the forefront of the Cowboys' most innovative business partnerships and strategic projects, including the stadium naming rights, negotiations, design, development of its world headquarters and training facility, which if you haven't been to the stadium is pretty phenomenal. And then, interestingly, she also concurrently, since 2021, has served as Chief of Strategy for the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, which opened a National Museum and Leadership Institute in Arlington, Texas, and will establish, which I think you just did this, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, the monument on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., to preserve the values and legacies of the Medal of Honor recipients, correct?
Yes, it is approved, and we are working through location and design and all of the next steps of that. So we're so excited.
Awesome. And then, of course, she serves with me on the Delta Gamma Foundation Board of Trustees, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So, okay, Jennifer, I covered the highlights, but tell us a little more about you.
Well, thanks, Heather. I'm so appreciative that our paths have crossed through our work on the foundation with Delta Gamma. And I'm thrilled for the opportunity to have this conversation. So thanks for inviting me to do so. As you mentioned, I've worked in the NFL for over 20 years in both corporate partnerships and a variety of special projects. And I've been really fortunate to work on some very special moments in the business here at the Dallas Cowboys. You mentioned the training facility here, as well as our stadium naming rights. We've also renovated portions of AT&T Stadium recently, and I've also had the opportunity to undertake special projects in some unique business areas for us, including co-working and esports, fitness, luxury residential, and even some private hospitality concepts. So it's been very fun to learn about a lot of different industries and leverage the Cowboys brand experience in that way. I've also, at the same time, for the last 6 years, served the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, and that's been a tremendous opportunity and extension of my work here at the Cowboys in helping to establish that museum, the Leadership Institute that is based out of it, and working on the monument that'll be in Washington, D.C. My contributions there have spanned business strategy and brand development and experience, also architectural and exhibit design, fundraising, and milestone events. So I feel really, really fortunate for the work that I'm able to do, and I'm really inspired and energized by it on a daily basis.
So if I'm sitting listening, and I know a little bit more about your background, but if I'm sitting listening, I want to know, how'd you get into this? Because it sounds so cool. Like, what was your pathway? Did you know this is where you wanted to be? Like when you were graduating high school or when you got into college, did you like, this is what I want to do? Or did it, organically go that way based on a couple of things that happened like as a young adult?
I always knew I wanted to work in business and marketing specifically, but it started to reveal itself to me through internship opportunities. So when I was in college, I was fortunate to go work for the Cincinnati Bengals for a couple summers, thanks to a NKU alumni there that was working in the organization. And I fell deeply in love with the idea of working in sports. And someone there introduced me to the idea of Ohio University's Sports Administration and Facility Management program, which was the first of its kind in the country, the strong alumni network. And once I was able to join that program and undertake that work, there was no turning back for me.
That is awesome. Now, have you always had a love of sports?
I have. I was a gymnast as a young child. I had Olympic dreams, but not the Olympic talent. My brother played basketball. And so we were always in and around sporting environments as young kids. And I think it's such a great character builder, but also obviously became a passion for me professionally.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you've worked on billion-dollar business ventures and deeply meaningful nonprofit work. How do they differ for you? And what's fulfilling from each side?
Well, it's interesting. The two organizations that I'm working with now, while very different on the surface, are deeply similar in their desire to unite and inspire people. And I'm really proud of what we've accomplished together. So, for those that may not know, the Medal of Honor is our nation's highest recognition for valor in combat. And of the over 40 million men and women who have served our country, fewer than 4,000 over the history of our country have received it. It's bestowed by the president, and today there are only 64 of them living. So there's urgency to preserve their stories for our history. And having a deep admiration and gratitude for military service, the Jones family, who own the Cowboys, committed to leading the museum's fundraising campaign, and they committed $20 million of their own money to that cause. Charlotte Jones agreed to chair the foundation for the museum board, and just as a result of that, committed to extend every possible resource of the Dallas Cowboys organization to help it excel and be successful. And so off we went together on this shared mission to inspire America under her tremendous leadership. Our challenges in doing that together were plentiful. Our fundraising campaign launched concurrent with a global pandemic. That was an interesting one. Our very visionary architect suddenly died after construction began. And our general contractor said that the building was the most complex that they'd ever seen. It was a this has never been done before kind of endeavor. Late in the project, we scrapped the design concept for our entire exhibit presentation and pivoted to an entirely new approach, and on a timeline that people said just wouldn't be possible. And the economic conditions continued to rise in terms of cost, and the supply chain locked up. So in everything that we needed to do to bring this museum to a reality, our margins were impossibly slim. Yet today, I'm proud to say there's a stunning museum that sits nearby AT&T Stadium that tells the stories of our nation's greatest heroes, with the hopes that it will inspire everyone that walks through the door and for many generations to come. And we did it from 3 years 3 years from groundbreaking to grand opening. And we did it with passion and belief and commitment and togetherness and grit. And those are principles that you hear both on the football field and the battlefield. So it's truly been the honor of my lifetime to contribute to this project and to do it alongside some of our country's greatest patriots and business minds and philanthropic hearts. I mean, it's never lost on me how fortunate I am to get to call this work. And I'm just so grateful that I've been at the intersection of this incredible opportunity between these two organizations.
Yeah, that is definitely one of those moments, defining moments in your life and career, right? So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So two things. So you go into this business. I know you are driven, right? I know you have a high expectation for yourself. You believe in excellence, right? You have been very successful. So two things. Where in your career did it change that you felt like you had a different purpose or a calling? And how do you define success now versus a decade ago?
Yeah, gosh. Today I measure success by my ability to make impact,
Mhm.
by the company that I'm keeping, the experience that I'm forging, the learning I'm acquiring, and my ability to help other people and organizations advance whatever's important to them. I think years ago, I would have measured it by the job offer, the salary, the title on the business card, or the sale that I closed. So today my definition of success has way more dimension and meaning, and I think an intellectual richness about it that I don't know that I knew would exist back then, but I'm so grateful that I've found.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what did working on the National Medal of Honor Museum teach you that business you would have never learned in business? Business.
Yeah, well, I think I learned first and foremost that tangible sacrifice and true love of country is despite the times that we're living in that are very divisive, is plentiful. And that's a really good thing to know. My work with the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation afforded me the opportunity to build friendships and working relationships with some of our country's greatest heroes and to experience their spirit of service and patriotism. And to do that through their hearts and eyes is something that has changed me forever, frankly. There are a couple good examples of that I can share with you. One of our youngest living Medal of Honor recipients is Kyle Carpenter, who is a Lance Corporal in the Marines. And Kyle was manning a rooftop in Afghanistan when the enemy initiated a daylight attack using hand grenades. Imagine being in that situation as a young person. Kyle shielded his fellow Marines from the blast by jumping on the grenade and absorbing the impact. He barely survived, and he spent 3 straight years recovering in hospitals. He endured over 40 surgeries to put his body back together, and of course was facing medical retirement. And in doing so, from his hospital bed, he enrolled himself in college and hired a tutor to come help him prepare to start that on the day that he was released. In 2014, he received the Medal of Honor, and in 2017, he graduated from the University of South Carolina. Today, he's a husband and a relatively new father, and just an incredible example of selflessness, humility, and fortitude. And he's got a great book. It's called You Are Worth It, which reflects what he responds to people with when they thank him for his service. But being in that company and having that level of inspiration really allows you to dig deep in your own moments of trial or challenge, and also to remember what's really important. There's another gentleman, General Patrick Brady. He's now well into his 80s, and he was a dust-off helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He used 3 different pieces of aircraft, rescued over 50 soldiers, and was doing things that other people said just wasn't possible or even safe. For the last 30 years, he's been working to try to see that a museum like this has been established. And the reason it's so important to him is because he describes it as the vehicle by which he can continue to serve his country beyond his lifetime. And you just take a moment and you let that sink in.
I love that.
Someone who has already given so much is thinking about how they can continue to give when they no longer are living. And so that kind of says it all for me, to have the opportunity to use my skills and experiences to pay tribute to those people and to inspire others by their stories. It's just a small way for me to be able to express my gratitude to those who have served and for all they've done for our country.
Talk about defining a legacy, right? And seeing it through. We're going to talk about legacy in a little bit. But I think that is a great example of really defining and leaving a legacy to something that matters to them.
Yes, it's touched me forever.
Yeah. So talk about, who has shaped you through your career. Are there certain people at certain points that you can look back and you're like, yes, that, they opened that door, or I learned something from them? Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, in my lifetime, I've been on the receiving end of some great mentoring experiences and relationships. And, that starts from parents who have been amazing and influential in my life to high school coaches. And, I think about even my collegiate experience as a Delta Gamma, being a graduate student looking to find her way in the sports industry, the teams and the people that I've worked for. So I think my appreciation and passion for mentoring stems from the understanding about the positive impact it can have on a person's career and their life. And I have a profound commitment to pay it forward. Talking to young people is one of my favorite things to do. And every time I have that opportunity, I really endeavor to offer honest, practical, actionable information and advice. And then I consistently say to others, pay it forward. When you have the opportunity, when it presents itself to you, do it for someone else, because all of those relationships have shaped who I am. And you take a little something from everyone that you encounter and that you experience a relationship with in that way, and it helps you form who you are, helps remind you who you want to be. And I'm forever grateful that I've had so many wonderful influences in my life.
So let's talk a little. You mentioned mentoring, and I know it's important to you, but 2 things. Why do you think ultimately, I look at mentoring, coaching, all these pieces of, right, teaching and connecting and engaging, right? And so where do you think like that started for you? Or why do you think you feel so strongly about that component? And my second part of that is, what is one piece of advice that you give young people more often than not when you're working with them?
Well, I think it's important to me because every great step I've taken in my life was because I was able to see someone else do it and then was, brave enough to have a conversation to say, how did you do that and how might I get there? Or to learn that maybe that wasn't the right step for me. So I think you have to see it, and we're all doing the best we can to figure things out. But if I can help make it slightly easier on someone else, that's important to me to do because many other people have done it for me. And I always tell young people, trying to figure out their way or what they might want to do in their career, that you've got to use your time as a student to ask for help and ask questions
Mhm.
because people want to be helpful to others.
Yeah.
And also at that point, you're really not looking for anything other than intellectual information from that person. And that's an easy thing for everyone to say yes to. So
Yeah.
taking advantage of that, I think, is really important. And then, of course, I always underscore the importance of paying forward it to the next person.
Yeah. It's a great perspective, great advice. So you are currently on the Delta Gamma Foundation. What drew you to being on the foundation? Why was it important to you?
Well, joining Delta Gamma remains one of the very best decisions of my life. I'm so glad that the 18-year-old me had the fortitude to choose that. I don't know that I knew going into it what an influential and important decision it was going to be, but it has been both personally and professionally. It really, as a college student, gave me critical experiences that prime me for career success. Things like interviewing as part of the recruitment process, or leading my peers as a chapter officer, planning events, managing budgets, even being introduced to the concept of philanthropy in a more formal way. But then you fast forward to today, and Delta Gamma is still providing years later, I won't say how many years, but years later, with great experiences, a network that spans North America, leadership opportunities like our role on the foundation, and most importantly, the opportunity to continue to positively impact other college women. As you know, in the last year alone, we funded over $1 million in training and programming for college women in
Yeah.
leadership development, health and well-being, and social responsibility. And that's very important work. And we also distributed over $1.2 million in scholarships and fellowships to college women. And I was a recipient of one of those graduate fellowships. It allowed me to pursue my dual master's degrees in business and sports administration. And so it brings me incredible joy to do work that results in providing those same opportunities to other young women today.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give young professionals that are trying to chart the course for themselves, right? Because I do think part of what I see, so I too serve on the foundation board, and then I'm also still an advisor. Um, and I think when I look at kind of this generation, I think there is this missing component. Maybe it was there too for us, but how to kind of transition into this professional role and chart your course. And not only professionally in the sense of a job, but building these networks, right? Whether you're in a sorority or not in a sorority, right? Or fraternity, right? What do you tell them in order to really kind of span the horizon as they look to the next 5 or 10 years? What advice do you give them?
I'm a big proponent of just making the next right decision. I
Mhm.
think when you're approaching a life transition, the end of
Mhm.
your time as a student and becoming a professional, that's a lot of pressure, and that's a tall order. And so I'm a big believer in just focus on the next step. Make the next right decision. And then the next one after that, and the next
Mhm.
after that. And then things start to, I think, reveal themselves.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't have a plan, but you don't have to tackle it all at once, and you don't have to have it all figured out. As I look back in my 20-year career in the NFL, My first decade, I thought about my career in very linear terms. I was
Mhm.
very focused on becoming a sponsorship executive in the National Football League. And I studied how others were successful in doing that so I could mirror it. I was plotting each step of my career path, and I was really intentional with every career decision. And that did serve me well. But
Yeah.
that linear mentality didn't allow me to contemplate all the unique opportunities and
Mhm.
experiences that were going to pass my way, the ones that accelerated my growth, sharpened my business acumen, increased my visibility, and propelled me in new and exciting directions. I mean, if I had focused just on that and hadn't been open to other opportunities and making that next right or best decision,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been doing some of the things that I've done today. And those things that we've talked about, those weren't written in my job description. They weren't on the bingo card I'd created for my career, but my goodness, it's been so much fun and full of learning. And so I also tell people to have a game plan, but to never forget to embrace the unexpected, leaning into the twists and turns, excuse me, the zigzags, and kind of going all in when you're tapped on the shoulder to do something that's scary or special. You never know where it's going to take you. And so remaining open and just making the next best and right decision is kind of what I lean back on as I'm talking to people.
Yeah. So when you um, went to serve in the role of strategy for the museum, were you scared? Was it bigger than you thought it was going to be? And I mean, obviously you made a great decision, but were you scared to do it?
I wouldn't say I was scared because I don't know that I knew what I was getting myself into. And sometimes that's a gift. I
I
think
guess it's a great thing.
had I known, I would have been scared and intimidated and felt a bit inferior, I would say. So I didn't know, and that was a gift. When I got into it, I very quickly knew how big and important and significant the opportunity was. But to be honest, I think those are the things that I love to do. A little bit of fear kind of gives you an edge. I may have some sort of sick addiction to doing things that I don't think that I can do. And that motivates me because there's learning, there's opportunity, there's experiences that you never would have imagined. So I'm a big proponent to leaning in when it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I am with you on that. There are many times when if I would have really known what I was getting into, I don't know that I would have said yes.
But
But I'm glad I said yes
that's right.
because
Best things
I'm
from it.
yeah,
And you always learn something about yourself.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about the business of football. Um, And so I would imagine that while it is absolutely, I think, a hardcore business, there's a lot of emotion that runs through sports, in particular football. So talk about kind of how, if it plays into what you do or how you approach things, just knowing that there's, especially for the Cowboys, right? There is this dedicated long time right fan base that I do think they are one probably out of majority of the teams they are really like to the death they are Cowboy fans. So talk about kind of how that kind of swirls into the business and your approach on things.
Well, first and most importantly, we are very grateful for that very passionate fan base. It's interesting because from a business perspective, what happens on the field of play is very much out of my direct control.
Yeah.
And our fans' passion is our greatest asset when we're winning and our greatest challenge when we do not.
Yeah.
And yet that inevitable pendulum swing, it really can't be an excuse for what we're tasked with doing from a business perspective day to day. So what that means is we have to be so focused, make such sound decisions, and execute so well that they can't question our commitment to excellence because when they can't see it playing out on the field to the outcome that we all desire, it becomes important that they see it in every little thing that we do and can control.
Yeah.
And I think the second part of that working through those emotional moments and roller coasters in sports is you've got to preserve a really strong sense of perspective. A
Mhm.
sports season offers the highest of highs and some really, really defeating blows. And if you love what you're doing, you feel the whole spectrum of that.
Yeah.
It can be an elating and a heartbreaking existence. And, I've been one catch from a conference championship appearance, and I've had a season where there was only one tick in the win column. So maintaining a healthy connection to those extremes and keeping your eye on the business at hand is really, really important. But all of us that do this kind of love the emotional side of it too. It's what drives us.
Yep. 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 So I think that leads into my next question. So what do you think is something that the business world can learn from the sports world?
Well, it's a little similar to what I said earlier, but it's to have a plan, but to remain nimble. Agility allows you to pivot when things aren't working as needed and capitalize on those opportunistic moments as they present themselves. And, frankly, it's exactly what a coach does during a game, and business leaders can benefit from doing it as well. It's a bit uncomfortable in business because usually there's a plan and systems and people and process. So the key to doing that well, I think, is having leaders and a culture and systems that can enable fast innovation. And I think a lot of businesses could benefit from that.
Yeah. 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 Even I watched the College World Series last night, and just even thinking about, to your point, just you're in the middle, right? You're down, the new pitcher comes in, you have to help your players adapt and respond and make adjustments in the moment, right? And I do think there are some businesses that are fantastic at that. And I think some of us can learn to do it way better. But I do think it is. I think I love watching that piece of it of as you go through, whether it's football or basketball or softball or, watching great coaches help their players respond and adapt. And I think that's what great leaders do, right? They work with their teams to assess and adapt. So, how do you how do you decide when you look at something that it's visionary, it's something that you definitely should do versus how do you do the risk assessment? I guess is my question, right? When you're going in to evaluate part of your business and you're thinking, okay, this is huge. What's your risk assessment look like?
Interesting. I mentioned off the top some of the more unique business ventures that
Yep.
we involved ourselves in. And those are things that we are not experts in: co-working, luxury residential, things like that. So, in nearly each of those projects, we embark on some degree of a feasibility study to evaluate our
Mhm.
likelihood for success. And we often consult and or partner with people outside of our industry who are experts in theirs to help balance our perspective. So that helps us make informed decisions and prepares us for what's ahead so that when we do take a risk to do something that's visionary, we know what is going to be required of us to be successful. And so I think that's helped us make really smart decisions about the areas and opportunities we pursue.
And so, do you think that, approach or mentality has also helped, in particular, the Cowboys stay as relevant as they are, as strong of a brand as they are? Um, even though um, they haven't won um, a championship in a long time, they are still one of the strongest brands, right, in the world. How does that happen? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, well, some of that's history and some of that's maintaining a relevancy today. Of course, we are all working for a championship. It's
Yeah.
harder than it looks. And
Oh no,
everyone
I think it looks pretty hard.
is very committed to it. But there are a few things that I've learned from inside my time at the Cowboys. The first is passion is everything. Our football team is built on people that train and play and coach passionately. Our fans believe and cheer passionately. They're passionately angry when things don't go as any of us would like. And our business relationships are built on passion for our football team and what our brand represents. I think the second thing that I've learned is to reap great reward, you must be prepared to take great risk. And Jerry Jones is a tremendous example of that. When he and his family purchased the Cowboys in the late 80s, they were losing $1 million a month. That was not a winning financial proposition, and the team wasn't doing well on the field. So he was willing to take the risk and work his way out of it. He knew that it was going to be an uphill battle, and so he took the risk and has been able to reap the reward of that in terms of the championships that followed, and now being the most valuable and well-known sports brand in the world. And then the last thing I might mention is, and he is the consummate salesman, but everyone in the organization needs to be a salesperson. Everybody needs to be looking for ways to advance the cause, to innovate, to sell ideas, to grow the business, and yes, to make money, because it's an expensive business to operate in, very much so. So while not everyone is selling in a traditional sense, everyone needs to be pushing the organization forward and driving tangible results that impact the bottom line. And those are some of the, I think, lessons and principles I'll take with me from this experience here at the Cowboys.
Definitely has built an incredible brand. That was my major in college, was marketing and management. And so I'm always, and it's interesting because as I spent my career in nonprofit, I do think it's probably one of the, I would say, deficits of the industry, because not very many organizations invest, I think, or really understand fully the value of a brand. But I was lucky enough to work for one of the organizations that did, which was Susan G. Komen. Right? And it's fascinating to me personally and professionally to watch organizations. And it really is the leadership, the personality, right? The culture that is grown and driven, but just that ability to be so endearing or known worldwide year after year, and people still are drawn to it. It's really pretty amazing.
Well, celebrating history without being overly nostalgic can be really tricky without some clear focus. So we internally use some brand values to guide our work. As we've kind of talked about, we're really proud of the past success, and we celebrate that championship tradition. But we're also competing every day to pursue excellence on and off the field, and we acknowledge that we can't rest on those results to sustain us into the future. So because of that, we're continually looking for ways to innovate, improve performance, deliver unmatched experiences, drive results. And those kind of guide us in balancing the past, operating in the present, and looking to the future. And so I think that's been really helpful to us to have those kind of internal guiding principles. And, it's interesting that the point that you make about nonprofits and branding is spot on. And Susan G. Komen is great at it. They're a great partner of ours in some of our crucial catch initiatives. We also work closely with the Salvation Army and are known for that relationship. And even in some of the work that we've done together, Heather, I often see that nonprofits are great at mobilizing resources and making impact, but they're not always great at telling their story. And they often forget that being able to tell your story well and demonstrate your impact in a messaging and marketing sort of way allows you to perpetuate that ability to do it. And so organizations like Susan G. Komen and others who have been able to master that, despite difficult circumstances and ebb and flow of business, realize that it can help perpetuate the engine that keeps them having the ability to do more good and make more impact. So I definitely think it's an opportunity area in the nonprofit sector.
I definitely agree with you. I think it goes back to legacy, right? A strong brand builds legacy. Long after a leadership change, an issue, the fact is that when you understand how to build a strong brand, what you really understand is how to build a legacy for the business to continue. And for me, when I think about nonprofits are a sector of business,
That's right.
right? And I think that um, too often the expectation is to build this incredible organization to have all this impact without really understanding there are just pieces of business that truly make that happen, and marketing and branding are pieces of its business. And you see that Komen, American Heart, they have extensive investment in building their brand, and they've been really successful. And that's one of the reasons why, because they do know how to tell their story.
One of the fun things about working in sports is being able to use our visibility to shine light on others who are doing great work. And
Yeah.
the story of the Salvation Army and the Dallas Cowboys is a great example of that through our Thanksgiving halftime and bringing visibility to their Red Kettle campaign, which in the, I think, 30 years that we've been involved is exceeded $2.5 billion in fundraising. And to be a part of that, to be a part of things like the National Medal of Honor Museum, to help other organizations is a really rewarding part of being able to work in sports.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that's pretty amazing. Because again, you're getting, not only are you building the legacy of your organization, you're helping contribute to build legacies for other organizations too, and making that investment. And I think that is pretty amazing. So, what do you think? So, what's the pressure really like, right, on a day-to-day basis in a position like yours? And what do you think kind of the myth is that you have to bust when somebody hears what you do?
Well, the question that people always ask when they hear that you work for a football team is, what do you do in the off season? And I'm like, well, all the work to make sure that the season goes well. So a lot of people think that your work is, I don't know, that it's like summer break maybe when it's off season. So that is the myth to bust. And what it's really like is, you think about the best part of being on a team, whether it's in your working environment, in a team that you were in as a kid, you're in it with people working towards a common goal. And it's fantastic. It is a lot of pressure, but I think, the people that are drawn to this industry probably thrive on that pressure. I know that I do. As I've already said, I like to do things that are a little scary or feel, beyond my comfort zone. And that's been some of the most rewarding work that I've done. And so it's nice to be in it with people. And you tend in sports organizations to have the ability to have a really special culture because of that. And we certainly do here at the Cowboys. We spend a lot of time on it. And it's an important part of who we are. And it propels us to be able to do incredible things that I don't think other organizations without culture like this have the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
It's a differentiator for sure.
Yeah. So, have you ever said no to something and then regretted saying no?
Well, yes, and this is probably a silly one. I'm not one to really like dwell and regret and have, take backs. But when I was in college, I passed over the idea of studying abroad, and that is the one thing in life that I would go back and change. I have such a passion for travel and I love new experiences. So I wish I'd awakened that in myself a little sooner. I was so worried about not missing out on that college experience that we were having right there on campus that I let that pass me by. And I suspect I'd have conquered more of my life travel to-do list if I had said yes to that. But there's still time. So
There is. So let's talk a little bit about legacy and leadership. What does legacy mean to you personally?
Well, it's pretty simple. Leave things better than you found it and make sure people know and feel how much you cared
Right.
about them and about the work. But leaving it better and also leaving as you move on to whatever may come next, better for the experience that you had as part of that.
And from a leadership perspective, What's evolved for you, over the last, 10 years of your life? What kind of leader were you then, and how do you describe yourself now?
Gosh, that's a great question. The last 10 years have been really interesting, but I think the more pivotal moment in my leadership journey was when I went from doing to managing.
Mm,
That was really you learned a lot about yourself. And I ascended early in my career because I was put together and polished and professional, and I would put in the work. And so I was able to find myself in a lot of situations that I wasn't yet really totally prepared for because people felt like they could take me anywhere. And they felt really confident putting me in situations. And that was great to help me grow and ascend quickly. And then I became a manager of people, and it almost became kryptonite because suddenly I was a perfectionist. I was unrelatable. I didn't understand how challenging things could be. And so I was really fortunate that someone brought it to my attention, and I took a pause and I realized, okay, I have to like let down my guard a little bit, maybe not present as formally to those that I'm leading, to let them see me struggle or miss or make mistakes, find ways to connect authentically and take down your drive for performance and make it about them and be able to foster connections. It was humbling, it was hard work, it required some intention and mindfulness, but it was well worth it, and it was a great lesson to learn.
Yeah, it's one of the things we talk about, and that I've talked a lot about with my team in particular is, I mean, you can be a functional expert, right? The highest in your field, but translating that to leadership is very different. And, early in my career, I too struggled because when you're a functional expert, you check things, you see the tangible results, right? And when you're in leadership, and especially executive leadership and working with people, you don't always, you sometimes you see those very tangible results, but not always, right? And it's learning how to I think define that success that is not necessarily directly visible or tangible. That takes that's the transition piece, I think. But it is, we kid at this level, but it's the truth of, I don't solve functional issues. I solve people issues. That's what my day consists of, right? It's motivating. It's problem solving, but it is people issues. So
Yeah, leading and managing is one of the hardest things you can do because you lose direct control.
yeah.
It's also one of the most rewarding. And you've done it right when celebrating someone else's success becomes more exciting than celebrating your own. And I've had the good fortune of leading and managing some really bright stars and helping them grow and advance their career. And nothing makes me happier than seeing them succeed and grow and accomplish their goals. It's the very, very best. And so, we started talking about mentoring and
Yeah.
that being so important. Leadership is the next iteration of that, certainly. And I think it means so much because I've also been on the receiving end of it from so many people. So it's really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you just hit, the component of what a great leader is, right? When you are celebrating um, others' success, I think that is a critical piece, and usually what sets great leaders apart, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege, that's for sure.
It is. I some days it doesn't feel like that, but the truth is, it is absolutely a privilege and honor, I think, to lead. And you're always learning. I think that if you come into leadership and you're not one of those people that um, you like to learn on a regular basis, leadership will be tough because
Right.
you are always learning.
Well, they say in service, you go trying to serve others, but you always leave feeling like you gained more from it. And I think when you're really working at being a good leader, it's a similar experience. You put in a lot of hard work and you think it's about them, but when you stop and reflect, they've helped you grow too. And that's pretty
Absolutely.
amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story, and just spending time with us. It's been really great. And we appreciate you and the fun work and the awesome work and the meaningful work that you do. And I certainly appreciate you in partnership on the foundation too. We didn't talk about the foundation a lot, but I will say, like you, for me, it is incredibly meaningful after a 30 something plus career in Delta Gamma. It really is incredible to serve at this level, especially not only for an organization that means so much to me. It's really, like you, one of the best decisions I have ever made. It is the fabric of my life, woven through and through. But it is really cool that we have the ability to continue to have impact, outside of our careers as well, but for an organization like this. And I really love that. And I really enjoy serving with you.
Well, I love serving with you. I'm so glad that our paths have crossed, and I feel like I learn and get better and better by having you as a colleague. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that and also all the other things that I'm involved with. And I love your podcast. So thanks for letting me be a small part of it.
Yeah, it was great to have you. All right, with that, again, thank you, Jennifer, for being here and being a part of it. And as always, we want everybody to be a part of the PBT family. So join us. There are always spots for volunteering. Of course, you can be a donor. You can learn to get screened and go out into the community with us. So all different ways to engage with the work that we do and the impact we have across the state of Texas, connecting people to vision care, because we believe everyone deserves vision care. And so happy to always have people. So always reach out, ask us questions, get involved, come to one of our events, and look for us out in the community. And with that, we will close with the question we always ask: what's your vision? Have a great day. Take care.